Hi, I'm Jan Marie, and this is Wyse Talk. I am so happy to have today's guest on the show. She was here several years ago, and now she's back with two great books that she's written. Leslie Connor, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to have you. And let's just run through a little bit of some of your other books that you've already. So I have to tell you, I told you to run through it, and I'm taking over. But this book is Miss Bridie.
Miss Bridie.
Miss Bridie
chose a shovel.
And that won, the manuscript won a Tassie Award.
It did.
And then it's a children's picture book. And then your next book was Waiting for Normal?
Actually, the next book was Dead on Town Line over there on the end, which is a YA novel in verse. I'm a little bit of a genre hopper.
Oh yes, I remember this book.
Yeah.
And what made you choose what made you choose that as a title?
Well, it's about a girl who is dead and her body is on town line.
So Dead on Town Line.
And she's speaking from the grave. So yeah, that's spooky.
Now the third book that instead of me saying what's the third book?
The third book is Waiting for Normal.
I loved that book. That was my all-time favorite. Even though I loved your books, that I still loved Waiting for Normal. Yeah, and before the show started, I told her I wanted a sequel. And not that she's going to listen to me, but that's what I wanted. So what's the fourth book?
The fourth book was Crunch, which is another same genre as Waiting for Normal, same age group.
And
realistic
what age group
fiction.
is that?
Yeah, realistic fiction for 8 to 12-year-olds around in there.
I remember Crunch. I remember the bicycle. And then number 5 was?
Number 5 is Things You Kiss Goodbye, which you have a copy of there.
Now, Things You Kiss Goodbye, I could not put this book down.
Wow.
I loved this book.
Thank you.
And did you find that's true of women of a certain age who also read it?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it was marketed to 14 and up as its age group, so it's definitely an older teen book. But I have found that, I mean, it seems to me, reading reviews and responses and blog posts and things, it seems to me that it was appreciated more by the 20-somethings, and then most women, older women, really liked it too. So it must have been, it struck a chord there.
It did. It really did. And when we had discussed that you're going to be on the show, I really do need to read your books. And so I thought, okay, well, let me just start reading this. And you had me from the first sentence, and I'd just like to read the first sentence to you. Sure. Not that you don't know it. The night I cut my hair, my mother told my father to leave. I loved that juxtaposition. That's when it hit me. Somehow I reached the mud at the bottom of the pond. So in just saying, instead of telling me that she's depressed and unhappy and her life is not going well, you helped me draw a picture in my head, the mud, the slime, the gook at the bottom of the pond. Right. The scissors making it through my braid was just the landing. That's such an incredible opening sentence. How did you do that?
I'm not sure.
How did you do that?
I'm not sure. I know that it's always been a while, and then I've got my head in the next book, so I can't remember exactly how that happened. But I knew that I wanted, in those first few sentences, to suggest that there was going to be a family story to this, or that the family mattered to the character, and so for her to be devastated by her mother telling her father to leave, just that little note. And I think, too, the reader may ask, well, why? And hopefully that would, also grab you. I mean, sometimes a question will do that. So
it's also a very timely topic for teens, that parents are getting divorced. Why are they leaving? And it is devastating. And it is a cutting of the family.
Right. And she comes from a very traditional Greek family, so I think all the more, Greek American, but I think all the more I think the divorce rate's probably lower among families like hers, and so for that to even be on the table, that one of those parents would leave,
right,
the marriage would be, you know, I mean, I want the reader to feel like, well, that's going to devastate her for some reason, you know, and why? What is that reason?
What is this book about?
Well, this is about you know, a teenage girl. Her name is Bettina, and she has been very sheltered, kind of. I think that she has a difficult relationship with her father, and that I think that she feels rather invisible around him, and that sort of causes her to want to get noticed, I think, and you know, so that brings on a certain kind of behavior. The truth is, she's actually pretty well behaved, but she finds herself. In spite of his strict rules about dating and stuff, she finds herself coupled up with the sort of high school star basketball player. And that all looks real good on the surface and to everyone else, but he begins to be pretty abusive.
And so that's a very kind of interesting twist.
Yeah, very underlying kind of thing. And then what happens, I mean, you know, the way I describe it is that she then one day when she runs from him, she meets someone else, an older guy who has his own business. He runs a small garage where he does sort of fine repair work on classic cars and things like that. And they strike up a friendship, really, initially. But she is kind of navigating two relationships, one with an abuser and one that's just otherwise forbidden, as you know, she does begin to think of him as a love interest, but it's, you know, he's older and that would be forbidden. So
yeah, he is significantly about 5 or 6 years older.
It's more like 10.
And 10, and that's really huge at that age, a teenager.
Right, and huge to her family.
Yes.
You know, I mean, she doesn't tell anybody about him, and he's a secret. And,
yes.
Yeah,
well, what is his name?
Well, she names him Cowboy, just because of the way he dresses. And, you know, that's kind of part of the, you know, a little bit of a game that they play. They're really good friends to each other.
They are. Now, what I found very interesting was the interaction and the support her boyfriend had from all his friends, and they didn't believe her about the possible abuse until more of the end of the story. I thought that was very interesting how you interwove so many different, almost subplots in a way. How do you keep everything straight when you're writing?
List making.
Oh, do you really?
There's some of that, yeah, some list making, but I also am running the story kind of like a mental movie, and so if I just keep asking myself, okay, what's next, what is true here, what is, you know, asking myself that is always really helpful. When I'm stuck, I ask myself, wait, what is true here, you know, and try to get to the bottom of something, and it's usually an emotional truth.
Oh, that's
you know,
a good point.
What would somebody really feel here? And then I need to portray that on the page.
Did you have to do, there's a Greek is the,
yeah.
Did you, you're not a Greek, are you?
I'm not, no.
What made you pick that heritage, and where did you get your information? Did you do a lot of research?
Yeah, I think in my mind's eye I saw the girl first, and I thought, you know, I can see her, and I know that it's something traditional, and I think that I thought of sort of the small little Italian neighborhoods that are still around, and I thought, but it wasn't just Italians, and she just became Greek somehow, and I didn't explore too deeply about it because I wanted to just be able to write, but I did actually sit down and talk to a woman who told me, a young woman who told me about growing up with her father, and you know, she said it just wasn't as important as the boys in my family, and that he was dismissive, and that there was even kind of a little phrase that he would say that I did not use in the book, but there was kind of a, you know, that actually it meant it was a phrase that was used that meant for the mother to remove the girl from the room. It's not time for her to talk. I mean, we're done with talking to her. So when there were guests or something, if the child was going on about attention, it was, okay, it's time for her to go. And so he would tell the mother, get her out of here.
Oh,
you know,
that's
that kind of
interesting.
thing. So that stuck with me. I don't think I have a scene exactly like that in here because she's older, but that, I said, I think I know what that family is like.
But I could feel that between the father and daughter. You know,
Yes.
even though they're older, and then the mother finally spoke to the father at the end. I saw that coming in. But I want to say that I loved the Bettina. I loved that main character and and how she grew from the beginning to the end.
Well, she needed to grow. She's not very strong in the beginning, and
No,
I think
she's
she's
not.
totally insecure and doesn't have a good, strong sense of herself. Which, you know, and I think in terms of men, doesn't know what to do. I mean, really, most little girls, or many little girls, their first great relationship with a man is going to be with a man that is in her family, either a dad or a grandpa or, you know, a good uncle or something like that. And I think that was missing, and then she was kind of isolated and sheltered besides that. You know, her activities were kind of not exclusively female, but mostly female. She was a ballet dancer, so she would go to the dancing studio, and you know, there were not as many men there. Just that whole interaction thing. She didn't have any practice.
Yes, she didn't. I have a note here in my notes that I thought this would make a wonderful book for mother-daughter book clubs.
Yeah.
Then, to read with a mom and a daughter, reading it simultaneously, and then using this for discussion topics and reflection and discussing what would they do in certain situations. I thought it was wonderful. I'm not sure if would you mind reading? I'm confusing my thoughts, but would you mind reading for me on page 172? If I should fail, let me just find it for you before I hand you the book.
Sure.
And sit at this spot for you. Right here, I have it marked.
Let's see. Just the very last.
Yes.
Okay. So this is just the very end of a chapter, the last sentence. Sitting there under fire of green peas, because she's at the dinner table, and her brothers, who are really very funny and cute, are flicking green peas that are
so
falling from their
boy-like,
place.
yeah.
Sitting there under fire of green peas, a thought came out of the air: you can get an A+ and still fail. And this is just another moment where she has kind of made a play to get her father's attention about something she succeeded at, and he dismisses her.
And you can get an A+
and still fail. Sure.
And still fail in this family.
Because, you know, the thing she was going for more than the grade. She was going for approval, and she didn't really quite get that.
With regret, I'm going to have to stop talking about this book because I loved this book.
Thank you.
And with regret, I might add.
Okay.
And move on to the other book that was just published recently, All Rise for the Honorable Perry T. Cook.
Right.
Now I understand these are all my marks. Well, first of all, this is an advanced reader's edition that I have.
Correct.
What does that mean exactly?
An advanced reader's edition is. Its purpose is exactly what you did with it, which is to read it before its publication date. For me as the author, it's for me to look for the last round of typos and things like that, and also for the publishing house to check it the same way. So we scan it for that's the last check. You know, we've had a copy edit, but things still make their way through. So it's for that, and then it gets distributed to the media for reviews. To bloggers, to power librarians and school teachers, somewhat, and it begins the buzz. You know?
Well, I noticed that I went online, I looked up some of those things, and there are some power bloggers who are absolutely amazing in what they can do, and how they do a preempt for the book coming out to get people excited about it. And the same thing for teachers, and the same thing for some of the reviews, because I went and looked at it. I thought this was an absolutely phenomenal book. And can you just tell us a little bit about what it's about?
Sure. an unlikely premise. Everybody asks what genre is it in, and it is realistic fiction for 9 to 12-year-olds. But it's something that, as far as I know, doesn't happen. There's a little bit of an author's note in here that lets you know. But I'll read you just the beginning of the flap copy, so we have no spoilers. But it says, 11-year-old Perry T. Cook shouldn't be living in a prison. He has committed no crime. Perry was born and raised at the Blue River Co-ed Correctional Facility in Teeny Surprise, Nebraska. His mom is a resident on Cell Block C. So far, Warden Doherty has made it possible for them to be together. Anyone who knows about the arrangement is quietly okay with it, but when Perry is discovered by the new ambitious district attorney, Thomas Van Leer, everything changes. So
this is so interesting because it brings up many, many questions, philosophical questions that are wonderful for children because there's no right or wrong answer. Things happened, but they can decide whether people were right in doing what they did.
Right.
And there's an emotional tug here that you want it to be okay.
Yeah.
Like he would get up in the morning and go on the microphone. And do you remember what he said? Because I'm trying to think.
He's there. He's given that job as part of his. I mean, everybody has jobs they do at the facility, and he is not. By the way, we should just point out he goes out to school. In fact, he kind of is the guy with the most privileges at this minimum security correctional facility. But his job is wake up call. Yeah, the warden gets him up gently, and then he goes to the microphone and a little PA system inside the prison and says,
I want that
all
job.
Rise.
Yeah, I wanted that. It reminds me of Robin Williams in Good Morning America. Yes, that's what.
Oh, don't think I didn't think of that.
Oh, really?
Oh, sure. All those little pieces drop in, and you're not exactly stealing them exactly as they were, but it's like, oh yeah, it was like that Good Morning Vietnam.
Yes. And I always love talking on a microphone. God knows that's true.
Yeah, well,
now, I thought the premise. How did you come up with that premise? Because that's so unique, I think.
Yeah. Well, it started, I read an article in the New York Times and years ago, and I had put it away in a file, which is how I usually begin things. Something grabs me, and I think, this is a topic, So this was an article about a woman who's actually in Bedford Hills now, even, and she, the story was on her about how she's taken advantage of the education available to her, and she's in prison pretty much for life, but she has, she's succeeded there as much as one can. Mm-hmm. And, I think that's a conscious decision to make once someone is incarcerated. But what was interesting, the child-centered part, came from the fact that she went in when she had an 11-month-old child at home, and her parents, the child's grandparents, always brought the daughter in to visit. And I thought, right there, that's the piece I'm interested in, the kid and the parenting from prison piece. Because one of the things I learned during the research process, and this just 1 in 28 school-age children in the United States has a parent who's incarcerated.
I didn't connect that until you just made that point. But when the people might not know this, but I'm a retired teacher, and during the course of normal conversations and discussions in class, one of the levels I taught was 4th and 3rd grade, and it always came up that my dad, he's in prison right now, and it was just part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to not be a little shocked. I hope I never showed it, but it was just so natural, and none of the kids were shocked.
They weren't.
No, none of it.
That's interesting, because I think one of the things that happens is I think a lot of children carry the shame for whatever mistake that parent made with them, and of course, this book is very much centered on nonviolent residents in the case of Blue River. So minimum security. I mean, I don't know that I think that the research would be very different for people in Max, and I think too. I'm not sure that the children can visit there. I mean, it's really a special privilege. I'm not I know minimum security has much more visitation.
Well, I'm sure you're right. I don't really know this topic at all. But I think I'd like the viewer to realize that you feel an emotion for many of the characters there. Yeah. When they come in and the terms they use about the characters and having to acclimate themselves to the prison life, which I thought was very, very interesting. And I also found it interesting how he was presented with a problem because he was taken out of the situation, and how he got himself back in to see his mother. Right. I thought that was so clever.
Right. Well, you know, he's a boy who has. He you know, the part we haven't probably said is that he's in, and then he is taken out by the district attorney. And in fact, Foster's at the district attorney's house, which is just kind of, you know, pouring salt in the wound, I think is what Big Ed said about it, right? So, but he's a boy who has traded a prison that felt like home for a home that feels like a prison, because that's the unknown. Anyone that feels, you know, the first chapter refers to a new intake. And you see the sort of the process of one of the other inmates trying to welcome the new intake. And the new intake is looking left and looking right and trying to acclimate himself and get comfortable. And what will the supervisor say? And can I shake this boy's hand? And why is this boy here anyway? And so that, you know, is kind of how, you know, I use that to get the reader in, because later on Perry feels like an intake, a new intake.
Very interesting. And the other piece that I wanted to make sure I brought up was the lawyer was absolutely correct in what he did. Okay. I mean, but he comes off as the antagonist for sure. He does.
But we were having a brief discussion before where I was saying I've noticed some readers think that he's too villainous and too obviously a villain. But to me, I could have seen things from his side too. Doesn't mean he did everything right.
No, he didn't.
But, you know, and he forgot, I feel, that he was separating a boy and his parent.
The word that keeps coming to my mind, and while you were talking, and while he lost his heart. Yeah. And he lost his heart, and he lost why he got into the profession originally.
That's right.
And so he got in because he wanted to help in children and families, and he forgot that for the letter of the law, which brings up interesting questions for discussion, where there's no right answer. Do you follow the letter of the law? Do you mix it with a little love and compassion? And what do you do? How could he have done it differently?
Right.
So, but the other part that you had, which I thought was very, very interesting, and I'm pointing down here, no one can see this, really? But in the book there was a box of files underneath the lawyer's desk, right. And how he knew how this kid could figure out whether the lawyer was really doing what he said he would do.
Right.
That was genius on your part.
Well, and it was hard on the character too, on Perry, because Perry really isn't a very devious boy, but he had to pull something kind of devious in order to get the information he really needed.
Yes, and he could sit with being okay to be accused of stealing for a while, just to see if the lawyer was going to do what he said he was going to do.
That's right.
Or just brush him off.
Right.
I thought that was very interesting. Now, is there something that I haven't mentioned that you'd like to mention about the books?
I guess I don't think there's anything specific. No, I don't think so. You know, my big hope is that this one will be loved as a classroom read. Not a short book, but the chapters are quick. You know, the chapters are short, and I've said that to the couple of school teachers I've seen. The book just launched on March 1st, and so the past few days have been spent in some classrooms, which has been fun. It's kind of part of a book birthday, you know. And it also happened to be a Read Across America week.
Yes.
So I did go in and visit some classrooms, and some of the teachers were saying, "Oh, that's kind of a fat book," and I said, "Right, but you know what? The chapters are only about 4 pages, and that's quick, and you can stop before the bell and you can get started again. Because I think there's a lot to discuss about mistake making and forgiveness, and there is a little bit, even though it's totally fictional, there is a little window into the other side of being incarcerated. You know, Perry really felt familial toward at least a cluster of the people in the facility, and they were his extended family, since he didn't have anybody on the outside that was really, you know. You
made that point about the family, and even in the back of in the acknowledgments, you acknowledge that there's a traditional view of what family is, and you say, but all my families, the ones that raised me, the ones that sit around the writing table with you, the ones that walk in the woods with you, and the ones that publish you. And I think my concept of family has certainly been enlarged from what I used to think as a child of what a family is. My church family, my neighborhood family. And I think that comes through in your book. There's more than one traditional family, and I'm not even sure how traditional families are anymore.
I'm very conscious of that because we have a real changing shape of the American family.
Yes, we do.
I mean, we have a huge divorce rate. Kids are living with step siblings now.
Grandmothers, they're living with grandparents.
Oh yeah. Oh, and I mean, some are onlys.
Yes.
Single parent households are more common, and gay marriage has changed. You know, the legalization of gay marriage has changed that, and I think that all of those should appear on the page. You know, and maybe not even as the issue, but just be there because that's how the world is.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I would like to see another book. How did you come up with a prison? I just was curious.
Oh, a prison. Well, like I said, that article that I read got me kind of started on it. And then when you've established a relationship with an editor the way that I have, and I'm working mostly with one or with two, you know, or with another, sometimes with in a kind of position with the same publishing house. You know, we got to talking about things, and they said, well, what's in your hopper? And I said, you know, there's this prison book. And then they had some thoughts about it, and I had some thoughts about it. And, you know, it was neat that we could kind of discuss it, and then they left me to go home and just totally let loose. I said, okay, no, don't start stitching me in too tightly here. Let's you know, because I need to be freed, and a lot of freedom. So we talked about what might be, you know, what we might do, and I was worried about the stretch of a boy actually being brought up in a prison, but I thought, why not? Why not? You know?
I hate to cut you off, but I would like to get your contact information. If someone wanted to get in contact you, what would they do?
Oh, they can find me via my website at leslieconnor.com. Everything's pretty easy to spell, pretty straightforward.
Yes,
Google
thank you
my
for
name.
that. Yeah,
Google the name of the book.
Very easy. Your website is very easy, very good to navigate, and your information is there, and your contact information. Yeah. And if you happen to forget that and you're interested, then you can always contact me at jmdteach@comcast.net, and I can always put you in contact with Leslie. This is, I'm looking, do you have another, we're almost out of time. Is there another book coming out?
There is. We don't have a pub date yet, but I'm writing it, and I'm contracted for it, so it's another novel for the 8 to 12 range, and another male protagonist, which is interesting.
That's so interesting. What does your work schedule look like? Do you make sure you write every day, or? Yeah,
pretty much. I usually have a deal with myself. You know, you have to spend 2 hours. If it goes poorly, then you're off the hook after 2 hours. But usually, you know, 2 hours in, and it will turn into 4 or 6. And, you know, I have to take breaks, but that's usually my, you know, it usually goes well. I don't stay stuck, though. You can't sit there if you're stuck.
No,
you gotta get up, take a walk, do something, make a collage, whatever.
Well, thank you so much, Leslie. I really appreciate it. It was what I'm looking forward to your other books, and I still want a sequel. I'm just saying. Okay.
For normal, I'll work on that for you.
Okay. Oh, I love it when you lie.